Hey y'all, today we're talking about the axolotl. So some of you may have already heard about the axolotl or have seen it around somewhere. It's this adorable little salamander, and it's been kind of growing in popularity in recent years. It's been popping up, all over social media. It's on YouTube, it's on TikTok. They put it in Minecraft, and axolotls have also actually popped up as a Pokemon, as a Fortnite skin, apparently. And they've become kind of famous for being, well, cute, adorable, cute, and like exotic aquarium pets. Like I found this website online called Axolotl Planet, and you can get an axolotl. Some of them are named, some of them have names, and you can get them from anywhere from $60 to $600. So I actually found out first about axolotls back when I was in like middle school because I was doing research for my speech and debate informative because I do speech and debate. And I actually got first with that informative. I got first in states. So, yeah, who's laughing now? Yeah, and I was researching to find an informative topic that I liked, and I stumbled upon the axolotl, and it really caught my eye. Axolotls became kind of like a mini little passion for me. When it comes to the axolotl, there's actually quite a lot more than initially meets the eye. They're more than just purdy. They're more than just a cute little face. They are worth more than their appearance, than their bodily appearance. They have substance, right? Axolotls are a species of salamander, and they are native to the stillwater lakes of Mexico, namely Lake Xochimilco and Lake Chalco. And so the name axolotl itself comes from the native Aztec language, Nahuatl, and in that language, the pronunciation would actually be axolotl, which I'm really proud of. I'm really proud of being able to pronounce that. And axolotls are named after the Aztec god Xolotl, who is the god of like lightning and fire and monsters and death, a rather sinister god. The scientific name of the axolotl is Ambystoma mexicanum. In the wild, in their natural habitats, axolotls are generally the top predator. They eat, mollusks, fish, insects, really anything that they can get into their mouths. And they are generally known to live up to 5 to 6 years naturally, but they have been known to live up to 15 years. Quite uniquely, axolotls are naturally pedomorphic or neotenic. These two terms mean the same thing, essentially that they retain their juvenile characteristics well into adulthood past sexual maturity. The standard salamander life cycle sees the salamander starting out in early life as aquatic larvae. Over time, they will undergo metamorphosis and lose their gills, becoming their terrestrial adult form. Neoteny, or pedomorphism in salamanders, would be the absence of this metamorphosis. Scientists think that it's quite possible that all salamanders are able to experience neoteny, where they just don't metamorphosize and they retain their larval characteristics. And it's thought that this is largely meant as a survival mechanism when there isn't enough resources or food, or the environment is just not suitable for them to undergo metamorphosis and turn into their adult forms. However, axolotls are especially unique because neoteny to them is the standard. They are naturally unable to metamorphosize. Normally, metamorphosis is regulated by the thyroid in salamanders and by a hormone produced by the thyroid called thyroxine. Axolotls lack the thyroid-stimulating hormone that is necessary for the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. So therefore, axolotls are unable to metamorphosize. And thus, axolotls are naturally neotenic. And so you get that famous adorable little face with those external gills that are retained even in adulthood. Interestingly enough, scientists have been able to induce metamorphosis artificially in labs in axolotls by injecting them with the proper hormones necessary to undergo metamorphosis. So axolotls do still have the normal salamander biological mechanisms for metamorphosis. They simply have evolved to no longer need it in their life cycles. Even beyond this neoteny, though, axolotls have captivated the minds of researchers and scientists and the general public, really, with their amazing capacity for regeneration. Axolotls have incredible regenerative capabilities, and they are one of the best vertebrates at regenerating, even more so than other salamanders, which are already incredible regenerators. In humans, for example, the standard response to a large injury to the physical body is to scar. So when someone gets an arm cut off, we don't just regrow back an arm. Instead, scar tissue forms, the wound closes, the tissue heals, and then it's just left as is. And so that's why humans have the need to develop prostheses for amputees, for example, because we simply do not have the biological capability to regrow all of that tissue. Axolotls, on the other hand, have been known to be able to faithfully regrow and regenerate anywhere from entire appendages to eye tissue to internal organs and even the brain and the central nervous system. I mean, it's the kind of tissue growth and regeneration that we only really get to see as embryos. Most mammals and vertebrates lose these regenerative capabilities past early embryonic stages. So it's truly a really unique and powerful superpower that axolotls have. Now, there has been extensive research and experimentation on the process of axolotl regeneration, specifically axolotl limb regeneration. And throughout this research, one of the keys of axolotl regeneration is something known as the blastema. The blastema is a structure that develops during limb regeneration in axolotls. And essentially what it is just a clump of undifferentiated cells. This means that the cells do not have a specific function or structure, and this is opposed to differentiated cells or differentiated tissue, which is specific in its structure and form. For example, you can have cells from the heart, you can have heart tissue, cells of the brain, which are different from cells of the skin. All of these are examples of differentiated cells. The undifferentiated cells of the blastema, then, are yet to differentiate. They are unspecific, but are the precursors to the differentiated cells that are needed for the limb's regrowth. Through research, scientists have been able to break down the formation of these blastemas into a few major steps. After a few hours from the initial amputation, the axolotl forms something called the wound epithelium, which is basically just tissue that covers over the severed limb, covers the injury site. Within a few days, this wound epithelium becomes innervated, meaning that it just becomes full of nerves. And the wound epithelium then develops into something called the apical epithelial cap. This apical epithelial cap serves as a sort of signaling center for the cells around it, inducing de-differentiation in the cells around the stump of the injury site. Over time, these de-differentiated cells will accumulate in the de-differentiation and migration stage, and the blastema will expand and grow out from the injury site with more and more de-differentiated cells. Now, as the apical epithelial cap and the blastema expands outwards and continues to migrate and grow, the cells in the underlying stump tissue near the original injury site will begin to differentiate and divide to become the cells necessary for the regrowth of the new limb. This action continues with the tip of the blastema growing and moving outwards while the base of the blastema differentiates. And so the new limb is formed from base to tip. And again, this blastema is really the key difference between how us humans and most other vertebrates are not able to regenerate at the level of axolotls, right? Because we scar while axolotls are able to de-differentiate into these blastemas. David M. Gardner, a researcher from UCI, explains that regeneration is essentially two steps. The first being de-differentiation and the second being growth. And as humans, we know how to do the second step, right? We have the biological capability to grow tissue. That's how we developed in the womb. That's how we, came out with arms and legs and a brain and a heart. And yet it's that first step, having de-differentiation, being able to have de-differentiated cells that are precursors to specific differentiated cells at will, that we have since lost from being an embryo. And so the essential bit is how axolotls have been able to master de-differentiation even out of the womb. And research has come really far in explaining how this works, the biological mechanisms for this de-differentiation and regrowth in axolotls. There are breakthroughs in axolotl research being made constantly. In 2013, Australian Regenerative Medicine Institute of Monash University in Australia and the National Heart and Lung Institute of Imperial College London published research about the importance of macrophages and the immune response in axolotl regeneration, discovering that early macrophage depletion blocked the formation of a blastema. In 2023, Stanford Medicine and UC San Francisco published research on axolotl regeneration as well, finding that whereas cells will usually decrease protein synthesis during injury to conserve energy, axolotls will actually stockpile mRNA and increase protein synthesis after injury. The researchers found that this was because of an evolutionarily divergent mTOR enzyme which promotes protein production. mTOR is found in humans and other mammals and activates under the best conditions with sufficient nutrients. However, the mTOR enzyme in axolotls is ultra-sensitive and thus able to flip on in response to injury. On June 10, 2025, Northeastern University and the University of Kentucky published research finding a gradient of retinoic acid forming along an amputated axolotl limb. This retinoic acid was found to interact with the SHOX gene in order to communicate proximodistal position to the blastema, essentially communicating how far away from the torso the injury is, whether they should regrow back from the elbow or from the forearm or from the shoulder. And thus retinoic acid and this SHOX gene are essential for the proper regrowth and formation of the limb. Retinoic acid and this SHOX gene, interestingly enough, are also both found in humans. I mean, there are so many really exciting discoveries being made quite frequently and quite recently too, with some of these studies being published only a few weeks from when I'm recording this video. And with each new study, there's hope that we are one step closer to unlocking this mystery as the next breakthrough in modern science and regenerative medicine. And there are applications across the board, with scar-free healing, being able to regrow arms and legs, no longer needing prostheses, being able to, on a large scale, regenerate tissue, even internal, even of the brain, perhaps, and perhaps even applications with cancer research, as axolotls are known to be resistant towards cancer. So as you might imagine, with all this excitement, all this hype, all this hope around the axolotl, they have become quite a valuable animal research model in the laboratory. And they're being used in research even beyond just research on regeneration. They're a really great lab model, uniquely so because they have so many structural similarities with humans, and also because they lay hundreds of eggs at a time, and those eggs are really easy to observe and manipulate in studies. So axolotls are really quite popular now. Recent estimates say that there are around 1 million axolotls now in captivity in both labs and as pets. They are a really loved and adored animal, and who wouldn't love them? So why are they critically endangered? According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List of Threatened Species, there are only around 50 to 1,000 axolotls remaining in the wild, and that population is trending downwards. Since the days of the Aztecs, the population of wild axolotls has dramatically decreased. During the period of Spanish conquest, the waters of their native lakes were drained, and this has only continued with the urbanization of Mexico City, the constant pollution, and the introduction of invasive species, making the habitats of axolotls increasingly unlivable. If this trend doesn't change soon, axolotls will soon be entirely extinct in the wild. I'm reminded of a John Green quote that I read in my AP Lang class, actually, from his podcast, The Anthropocene Reviewed, episode 11, Teddy Bears and Penalty Shootouts. For many species of large animals in the 21st century, the single most important determinant of survival is whether they are of more use to humans dead or alive. But if your life can't be especially useful to humans, the second best thing you can be is cute. Something about you must make us feel guilty for eliminating you from the planet. And I think the axolotl serves as a perfect example of humanity perfecting the making of nature into pure utility. We have plucked the axolotl entirely out of nature, out of evolutionary history. I think we often are desensitized or even just don't think about how profound it is for a species to go extinct. I mean, that is a piece of existence a line of evolutionary history that is entirely severed and completely vanished to time. A miracle of existence against all odds, lost to the abyssal nothingness. That is terrifying. And yet the axolotl isn't extinct. It's not extinct. It's not dying. It's thriving. It's thriving in captivity because they are useful to us in captivity. They are useful to us in labs to further our understanding of science and medicine. They are useful to us in aquariums and as pets. They're cute. They're entertaining. The ones in the wild, they're just kind of there, not really of any importance to humanity. And so we let them die. And maybe I'm like reading too much into this, but I think the axolotl can really be seen as the pinnacle of modern human hubris, right? Our insistence on our distance from the nature that we came from, our insistence on our own importance. There is a not so distant future where the only place you will ever find axolotls again is in Minecraft and Fortnite and Pokemon, reduced down to a simple image of cuteness and exoticness and commodified. A miracle of existence dead in the wild, only remaining in the pixels of our video games and social media, the dark tanks of our labs, the aquariums in the corners of our houses, plucked out of the history of life. These creatures that are neotenic, that remain forever children, forever in stasis, removed of living purpose, unable to evolve or cause evolution, cut off from the sights and sounds of life, the delicate chaos of nature's dance, sanitized and sedated and sliced and studied and sold. Their only remaining purpose, to serve humanity as another tile on our road to godhood.